How many cigar makers, and I don't mean to say this in a way of disrespecting maybe somebody's financial situation or maybe the fact that they have other commitments, but if you want to be great at something, you have to do it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you put in part-time, you're going to get part-time. And you got people that want to put in part-time, but they want to receive full-time. They never will receive full-time.
Today's guest is a great one. He's a doctor, he's a father, he is the founder of the Boutique Cigar Association, and he also has his own cigar brand. I'm talking about Dr. Gaby Kafie. Gaby, welcome to Deep Cuts Live. It's your first time.
Antoine, thank you. Thank you very much. Happy New Year. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, thank you. I always tell people, and people know this, I always make a big list of people that I want to have on the show. So you were actually on my 2022 list, but I never got around to you. I talked to a lot of people, and you have such a great reputation, which I know.
Wow.
But people actually were like, Gaby Kafie is one of those people you have to talk to, because of the Boutique Cigar Association, because of your opinions, because of the work that you've done to be an advocate through, for the FDA stuff. So I hope you know that you do have like I said, such a big reputation, a positive one, and that people want to hear from you. So I'm sure our little chat today is going to be just kind of, off the chain, I would just say.
Thank you very much. Very kind words to start with. I'm grateful. I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah. I want you to introduce yourself, because I tell people Deep Cuts is not for the cigar aficionado per se. This is for those people who are new to cigars and they are a little bit nervous about walking into a cigar store, asking a question, thinking they're going to sound completely dumb or something. So I want you to introduce yourself to people, who you are, a little bit about your company, and then we're going to, kick off a great conversation from there.
That's a great question. My name's Gaby Kafie. I'm 50 years old, turning 51 in July, for those of you keeping track. We came to this country as immigrants legally. I have to say that nowadays people are very sensitive. But I got here to the U.S. in 1977. I was 6 or 7 years old. Our family came from Honduras. We went to live in California. And we were the typical immigrant family, hardworking parents, very disciplined, Roman Catholic upbringing. My brother and I were two siblings until my sister came along about 10 years, when I was 10 years old. And we lived in the West Coast up until 1993. I finished high school, went to undergrad at UC California, Irvine to be exact, where Apple is based. So it's kind of interesting. There's so much cigar culture in the West Coast that doesn't really get mentioned, but it's massive. And I ended up in Miami, Florida, came here for medical school, did my residency training in Florida. And apart from becoming a doctor, Gaby Kafie is a person that loves the outdoors. I love fishing. I love offshore fishing. And I've always had a love for cigars since the age of 18, when I was introduced to them in Honduras on the beach with a cousin of mine. And people always ask me, what was the first cigar you smoked? And it was a Joya de Monterrey, made in Honduras at the time. And it's just been a interesting story, because a lot of us are immigrants to this country, most newer than not, right? A lot of us came to the U.S. after the 50s, 60s, 1970s. And becoming an immigrant, coming to this country as an immigrant is very difficult. I'm not going to go deep into it, but one of the challenges is that I grew up in a home where my parents spoke Arabic and Spanish.
Wow.
So it was, I would say English was my third language. And one of the things that I remember the most, being in California, being in third or fourth grade, is coming home one day, and my dad, he spoke English with an accent, and obviously his first language was Spanish. But he said to my brother and I, he says, listen, no more Spanish at home. We're only going to speak English because I want you guys to speak English perfectly. And his madness with that topic was that he wanted us to never be treated as if though we were not Americans. And obviously the definition of American has changed a lot over the years. It's a very accepting term nowadays. But in the 80s and 90s, if you spoke with an accent, no matter where you were you automatically labeled a foreigner. So it's been a very interesting journey now that we have children. I have a 14-year-old son, a 10-year-old daughter. We're trying to raise them bilingual, Spanish and English. We live in Miami. It's only proper. But the most fascinating thing about me as a person and how I've evolved, I think, has been the influence of so many international business partners in over 47 countries that I think my upbringing helped me to establish those relationships and understand how to work and build partnerships with people from different countries, different cultures, different languages. It's a global economy that we live in now. And a lot of, it's interesting. I was talking to one of our new distributors in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. And he says to me, he goes, our first conversation, he says to me, you know, Gabby, we have a deep passion in common. And you don't know what that is. Of course, you know, we both love cigars, but he says it's not cigars. He says to me, I love offshore fishing. And the interesting thing about the offshore world is a lot of the guys that are tuning in, they'll know what I'm talking about, chasing pelagics, going down, you know, deep sea fishing, whatever it is that you're going after. It's like when you open up the conversation to golf. I'm not a golfer, but when you start talking in a room, if you're a golfer and you're talking to golfers, everyone clicks. And the offshore big game fishing world has something very similar as well as cigars does. So it's a real beautiful industry. I'm honored to be a part of it. I love creating. I love being self-made. I love the concept of sacrifice and struggle is what builds great companies. And that's been the journey I'm on. And a lot of people, when you're looking out through the window, right, looking in, you're just getting a segment of what goes on in a 24-hour day of my life. And there are struggles, there are ups and downs, there's moments we celebrate, few and far between. I wish I could say we celebrate every day, but it seems like 90% of the time it's just that focus, dedication, struggle, sacrifice, and staying disciplined to be able to execute on what our plans are. That's Gaby Kafie.
Awesome. You talked about your father, and I'm really curious about what was your relationship like with your father? Because I find that a lot of people are actually defined by that relationship.
That's a really good question. I'll share something with you that I don't share often, probably never, is my dad passed away at 62. I was about 28 at the time. I can look at you in the eyes and tell you that he not once said, I love you to me, to my brother. I don't know if I think my sister got away with a few I love yous, right? But
of course.
But it was something that was kind of, mom was a different story, but dad was such a strong charactered man. I really like to think that he was too busy showing us that he loved us than telling us. There's a big difference. I think you know the difference between the two. But Pops had the type of character where making errors was not an option. Growing up and not making the family proud was not an option. Growing up and not having direction was not an option. Failure was not an option. There was so many things that were not options because of what he demanded. And he demanded it in a very quiet way. It's not like he was loud or physical or abusive. He's not once did he put a finger on me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just that disciplined man, 6'2", 240 pounds, strong character, came from a very strong character family, but just knew the type of children he wanted to raise. And he's the one that got us started into fishing. And I'll give you his reasoning behind fishing, which is actually quite brilliant, is Saturday mornings up at 4:30, 5 a.m., right? Imagine you have children, they're teenagers. What do they want to do Friday night? They want to go hang out with their friends. They want to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning. Pops made it a rule. We would go fishing on Saturday mornings, and he was leaving the house at 5 a.m. That meant we had to be in bed by 10, 10:30 Friday night. There was no going out. We were going to bed because we all wanted to go fishing. And my brother and I had that structure, I would say, well into our teens.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew Saturday morning we were going fishing, and we loved to fish, and we had a great time. So it's when you take young children with all that energy and they want to go out, they want to go have fun, they want to party, they want to start drinking early, they want to do a lot of stuff. Kids are going to do what kids do. And Pops was very good at figuring out in a subliminal way how to keep us busy and keep us out of trouble so that we could accomplish. I got to tell you, my older brother's a vascular surgeon in Pensacola, Florida. When he became a doctor, I said, heck, I got to become a doctor. I'm not going to fall behind, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to put your children under pressure, but good pressure. Guide them in the right direction. And my father was really, really good at that. And having children now, it's really difficult to know if I'll be able to do as good a job as he did. But I think life is very simple. Try your best and stay out of trouble. That's really all you got to do. You know, and that's what I could say about Dad. Thanks for asking that question.
Oh, no, thank you for sharing. Like I said, I know that question is usually a very personal question, and it's not something that you're accustomed to hearing on a cigar-related podcast. But I think it's important for people to kind of, think about their relationship because, like I said, your father, your relationship with your mother is important, but your father tends to be like that one pattern that really shapes who you are in some way.
I'll tell you one other story, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being 11 years old. We lived in California. My parents had a liquor store in Tustin Ranch. It was called House of Liquors. Beautiful store, 4,000 square feet. It was Pops' pride and joy. I mean, he really built up a great business. And I forgot the address, but I looked it up on Google Earth the other day. One of the things I remember vividly was my godfather, Mario Bukele. My godfather he passed away, but he's the uncle of the president of El Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
If you've heard of Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, current president, my godfather was his uncle.
Wow.
So very disciplined man, very intelligent politician, businessman. So he came to California, came to visit us, wanted to take us to Disneyland. So of course, the kids are going, my brother and I are excited to go to Disneyland. And I remember the morning he met us at the business, my dad's store. It was around 9:30 in the morning. My dad was there. And as an 11-year-old child, I was thinking my parents are coming along with me, right? We're a family. We're all going to go together. We're going to go have fun at Disneyland. And we get in my uncle's car. I guess I don't remember if he was renting or not, but we get in his car. We're sitting in the back seat, and I'm kind of by the window. And as it hit me at that moment when I saw my dad out in front of the store with a broom sweeping the front of the store as the car turns on and we're driving off to Disneyland. And till this day, I remember I shed a tear. It wasn't so much that my dad wasn't going. It was a reason of why he wasn't going. It was at that very moment that I realized that here's my dad, busting his ass, working. He could shut the store down, go have a great day, but the sacrifices that our parents made if you acknowledge them, and I think if every person acknowledges the sacrifices that their parents made, then you won't take the privileges you've been given for granted. And I think that's a lot of where my work ethic comes from. Is I think being lazy is disrespectful to them and disrespectful to any gifts that we've received from. I'm a man of faith, and I believe God blesses us with gifts. And I think that we have to show gratitude. And the way to do that is by being disciplined, being a good man or woman, working hard, and of course, have a good time. But, don't ever forget your true north. I think that's the secret. And we're not talking about, a lot of people confuse success with money. And I think that's the biggest fallacy we make. Because if you think about all the things that God created on earth, he did not create money. So when you look at mankind or humanity chasing constantly, I'll repeat that, chasing constantly the one thing that God did not create, there's a problem with how we measure success. There's a big problem. I think success is a world unto its own. It's a multidiscipline. It has to do with your faith, your family, your friends, I think your core beliefs, and the impact that you have on anything, your environment, people, friends, somebody you run across in the street, that interaction that you had. I think you measure success by being able to go to sleep at night at peace with yourself. And that's something that you cannot quantify.
I think that was definitely the aha moment so far in the interview, because I'm always interested in that kind of stuff, because I think in business, too many people get wrapped up in that, account sheet and that P&L, profit and loss. Yeah. And they kind of miss the whole point of of why you want to do the work. It's not always, like you said, for the profit, because you can lose money and you can make that money, but you can never make that time that you spent chasing the money, So it's like we have to kind of change the way that we kind of think about business and why we are chasing, as you said, certain things. But before we get deep into it, I definitely want to make sure that we talk about your business and the cigar thing. So the question that I had for you was, I know you as I know every time that we correspond, I usually always say Dr. Dr. Kafie and such like that. And I think, but how does a doctor get into cigars? And I think that's a good question, because a lot of people, as I was telling you earlier, I spend time on TikTok, not doing the dancing videos like most people think, but I'm posting educational content about cigars. And I still see that there's so many people, and it's a wide range of ages of people, it's young adults to, older adults. And they have this still a very negative connotation about smoking, which to some degree, I think they should, if it's like cigarettes. And I'm not saying that cigars, I'm not a medical professional. I can't speak to that, how cigars kind of rank up against, cigarettes, but it's like the conversation is all jumbled up into one. Because I've seen people, when they talk about, it's all tobacco. It's like, just like the FDA stuff. It's like vapor, e-cigarettes, cigars. Everything is like in one big category, cigarettes. And I'm like trying to unjumble it. And it's like, it's a lot of work to unjumble it and to educate them. So how does a doctor get into cigars? And then, like, how do you, I'm sure you've had that question come up to you before. It's like, I think somebody posted on TikTok, like, how does, how do you justify smoking cigars? Are you worried about cancer? Are you worried about lung issues? Or how do you deal with all that?
All right. So I'll keep it structured, and then we'll get into the shit hit the fan conversation, right?
Right.
How does a doctor get into the cigar industry? First of all, let me tell you real quick why I'm no longer practicing medicine. In 2008, I developed a disease of the eyes called central serous chorioretinopathy. And what it is, it's bleeding behind the retina, which causes retinal detachments. And then when the retina attaches again, it forms scar tissue. So unfortunately, I got it in both eyes, and I've got my vision affected in both eyes. I lost central vision in my left eye. I lost peripheral vision in my right. It's a chronic condition. It does not cause blindness, but I'll be honest, it's a pain in the ass. And one of the things I live with the most that probably nobody knows until now that I mention it is just migraines 2 to 3 times a week. And it's from, obviously, I have to work. I'm a workaholic. I love to work. I love to create. I love to build. I don't do well if I'm just sitting around doing nothing. And in 2008, when my ophthalmologist said to me, I can't release you, I can't give you medical clearance to go back to work, it was a very difficult moment. I've already digested that experience. I'm not going to start crying right now, but I have many times before. But it was difficult. My wife was pregnant. We had a child on the way. I had bought a house, mortgage, typical American family, 2 car payments. And here I am being told that I can't work anymore as a doctor. And that's all I knew how to do as to make a living. It was a 3-year hiatus where not only could I not practice medicine anymore, but about 6 months after I was told I couldn't practice medicine anymore, they told me I couldn't drive anymore. So a lot of people are wondering, well, how come Kafie's got a cigar company? How come he's not doing events all over the country, traveling, visiting shops? Well, I have limitations, guys. And it's funny because I've gone to Intertobac a couple times, and I always take somebody with me. I'll get lost. I have trouble with the signs, the reading, the high. I can't do that stuff. I'm not saying I'm handicapped, but I have limitations, right? During my 3 years off, let's just be real. I was sitting on my ass 3 years off. One of the things that kept me sane, because the doctors, I love my doctors, in case they're all going to watch this. You know what doctors do? If you're feeling down, they give you a freaking Lexapro. If you're feeling moody, they give you another freaking double your dose of Lexapro. They put me on medications that just weren't doing right by me. I felt like a zombie. And I came home one day. I told my wife, honey, I can't take this shit anymore. There's no ups and downs, right? So usually people have ups. You're happy, you're sad, you kind of go in between throughout your day. When you're on one of those mood stabilizers, because of what Lexapro is, it just kind of keeps you there in the middle range. So you're kind of like a freaking doorknob. You're not ups and downs. And after about 6 months, I told my doctor I was taking it. I just got off of that shit. I'm sorry.
I did the same thing.
Okay, good. No disrespect to anybody taking them, but they weren't for me. It was, and mind you, I'm the guy that through med school, I was smoking cigars while I was studying for exams. It was just it's always been my thing. Cigars have always kind of relaxed me to the point where now I can take those 1 or 2 or 3 hours of, how it is, higher concentration. You've got to be alone. All progress is made when you're alone, thinking, learning, understanding, conceptualizing. That's when all progress occurs. I tell my children, I'll get back to the topic. I tell my children, don't live in a constantly distracted state. That's what we suffer from today as a society. We suffer from a constantly distracted state. Get out of that and go into the creative center. Because in life today, you're either a creator or a consumer. So you got to decide early on, where do you want to be most of your time? You want to create or you want to consume? And I've always been a creator. But a doctor going into the cigar industry, I was doing a lot of fishing during that time where I was off. I had the fortune of having great friends in Miami, it's not hard to find people that love to fish. This is like the fishing mecca of the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had started a big game fishing lures company about a year after I was laid off, or I was off of work from being a doctor. That's a whole other show, let me tell you. I started a fishing lures company that within about 14 months, we had distribution in 24 countries. We made fishing lures for big game fishing. And that company lasted for about 3 years. It was acquired. I'm not going to go into that because I can't. We signed no compete. We signed. I can't talk about that. But we built a very successful company. In Australia, our lures were known as the Mercedes-Benz of fishing lures. They were just fantastic. They were high quality. You got to remember, I studied biology and I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was in undergrad. So that kind of gave me some real insight as to if you're going to develop fishing lures, what should it be like? What should it swim like? What should it look like? What should the shades be like? Because fish don't see color, fish see shades. The colors are for humans. When we go into the store, we see a beautiful red or purple lure, we buy it, we like it. But in reality, the fish are seeing shades of those colors. During my fishing years, I was smoking cigars. And it was during a tournament that we were fishing in the Bahamas in 2012. We actually won that tournament. A good friend of mine, Captain Bruce Burnett, was running a 63 Bertram. The owner of the boat was a friend of mine, Louis Perez. He invited me to come out. We spent a month fishing Cat Island. The entire time I'm smoking luxury cigars on this yacht. I'm not going to mention brands, but they were $30+ each cigar, every cigar, for an entire month. And I've always been a cigar aficionado. I was the guy that always went into my local retailer, bought cigars, and left. I don't even think I even said hi to anybody. I walked in, bought, and left, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that there was, back then, the sweet spot for cigars was in the $5 to $6 range. And I noticed that there was a void in that range. There was an absence of quality. I started to really look at the brands, look at who's producing what, where it's coming from. That was a time when it was post-cigar boom, about a decade into it. The industry was stagnant. I remember that year Cameroon was hot. Everybody was chasing Cameroon cigars. At that time, I had no idea what that was. And I felt that there was a place for us in our family story, being that we have a 120-year family story in Honduras, because we were not only immigrants to the U.S., but our ancestors were immigrants to Honduras. And Kafie 1901 represents the Kafie family immigrant story to the Americas. That's when it started. That's when my grandfather left England, arrived in New York at Ellis Island, and it was 3 months later that he went from New York down to Honduras, arrived at Puerto Cortés, the port of Cortés in Honduras. So when I look at our family's journey, being third generation Honduran, always loving cigars, in my eyes, I was seeing a void in a certain segment of quality boutique cigars at a certain price point coming from family-owned cigar companies. You know, back then you had 5, 6, 7 names that were becoming big, but as they were becoming big, they were getting acquired. And what happens is it kind of created, I felt that it created an absence of, you know, the guy that started his own company and wanted to build his own brand and had a vision for what he wanted to create. Everything became operated by multinational companies. And as we see today, it's even more pronounced than it was 10 years ago. So I felt that there was a void, but I will tell you something, and we'll get back into how a doctor gets into premium cigars, but that void that was created has not been easy to fill because the pockets of the big companies are just so unlimited that their marketing dwarfs any message, any voice that we have. So if we're not making great cigars, we're going out of business. And that's the beauty of boutique cigars, is that you can really bet, look, it's funny, right? It's 2023 now. You've got people that go on YouTube. They'll literally watch a review on a car, like the Ford Bronco, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll order one. It's a $70,000 car. They'll order it without ever driving it. But yet we still live in a day and age where in the cigar industry, most retailers won't buy a cigar unless they first smoked it.
Right.
It's kind of like a disparity. That same retailer bought a $130,000 Tesla without even touching it, but yet won't give the young entrepreneur, the guy who's busting his ass, won't risk buying a box to put it on the shelf to really support the dream of that man, that family, that woman. I think there's got to be a come to Jesus moment in our look, it's not free to give samples. We want to give them to everybody. At the end of the day, what giving out a lot of free samples does is it drives the price of the product up. And what I want people to know is I'm not going to risk my family's everything to make a shitty cigar. So if we reach out to you, it's because we want to work with you. If we call you, we want to work with you. If you want to try a sample, we'll give you a sample. But I think there's got to be a reality check because there's too many people asking for too many samples. And we all know the FDA has made it illegal to hand out samples to random people. You can't do that anymore. But I think we can help each other get to better places if we just run more efficient operations, businesses, especially for us, for retailers. We all need to come together. I know I went on a rant. I'm sorry, man.
No, it's good. What's your definition of boutique in terms of cigars?
Wow. So you all know I'm the founder of the Boutique Cigar Association.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tackle the Dr. Cigar question after this. Boutique is a philosophy. Boutique is a hands-on approach. Boutique is, you don't outsource anything. By that, I mean, from the design to the band, to the artwork, to the vector graphics, to the printing, you have to be involved in each and every step of the way, selecting of the tobacco, creating the blends. If the tobacco's not ready, you're there during the entire process. And it's very, not just time intensive. Let's be honest. Most cigar company owners, I'm not going to sit here and say it's labor intensive because we're like, how can we say it? We're the guys or the gals that decide if something is going to pass or not. But we have teams that are doing all the hard work. We're just involved in supervising the entire work. And boutique is a philosophy. It doesn't really, in my mind, I learned something valuable recently. I was at La Aurora last year, the factory.
Mm-hmm.
My first time there, a year and a half or 2 years ago. First time there, and I'm seeing this beautiful, impressive, organized, clean, outstanding factory. And there were 6 rollers off to the left that kind of caught my attention. And I was alone. Nobody was, I like to wander and do stuff on my own. I don't like to be supervised, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I go over there and I see 6 rollers and a supervisor, and they're making one cigar. And I start talking to them. Being bilingual helps, right? And I find out that there's a certain cigar that they only roll 100 cigars a day of. It's their preferido. It's if you've ever seen the tubes, the cigar tubes that they make, it's a double torpedo. Here's this huge factory, impressive operation, operating a section of their factory as boutique as it gets. Even more boutique than when I had my own factory in Honduras that I considered boutique. So when you ask me what do I think boutique means, I think it's a philosophy, it's an approach, it's a attitude. It's how you operate. It's the steps that you take in the process, the production scale, and also the end product. Are you rushing it? Is it, how long are you aging it? Are you testing it? Are you making sure this is what you wanted to create? Boutique is a beautiful word. Now, most people will think of a boutique like, you know, like here in Coral Gables on Miracle Mile, there's a bunch of boutiques, clothing stores, right?
Hmm.
It's a one-off. It's just a small shop. You go in there and this is what they have, nothing else. The term boutique means literally small, but in the cigar industry, it also means quality, and it means the philosophical approach of how you make a certain premium cigar. Now, you can have big factories that are mass producing cigars, but they can have a segment of their boutique production. I can understand that. I can see that. And I've seen it firsthand. Now, when it comes to the BCA, the term boutique is different. Now, the FDA made a fallacy in their definition of what a small cigar company is. The FDA's impression of what a small cigar company is one that generates $5 million or less a year or has 20 or less employees. And when I read that, I said to myself, whoa, they have just missed the boat. They have no idea what boutique cigar companies are.
Right.
So the Boutique Cigar Association was established to identify the segment of the industry, and we set a cap of 1 million cigars or less a year. That's a very good cap that was accepted by a lot of people, probably 98%. There was only 2 people that complained. One, because they were doing 1.1 million and nothing against them. They're still boutique, but we're trying to identify small companies so that when the FDA comes around and wants to put a knife at our throat, we could demonstrate to them, look how many companies you're going to put out of business, because these are companies that cannot afford the regulatory process. And we've been able to work with CRA and PCA side by side to get the message across, and we've been very effective at it. And it's been hard work. We do non-for-profit work at the BCA. We're organizing, we're getting our message across. It's a volunteer organization. There's 7 board of directors. But there are 2 definitions. There's I call it the administrative definition, and then there's the passionate definition to boutique cigars. Now, what does a doctor think of cigars? I don't think all cigars were created equal. The fermentation process that a cigar undergoes is critical in making sure that the cigar contains very, 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 very little, if no carcinogens, otherwise known as nitrosamines. I'm not going to get into the whole biology of the tobacco leaf because I will. I'm going to try to keep it simple so that I can understand it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I can understand it, and all the viewers as well.
Tobacco leaves, when they're green, they're alive, right? They have chlorophyll. They're full of ammonia, which is basically nitrogen-based. If you know what ammonia is, it's the same stuff found in Windex, right? Have you ever walked into a fermentation room and smelled the ammonia in the room? Okay, beautiful. So
yes, very strong.
But that's great that you've experienced it. If I say this, the cigar industry, the true cigar masters, are the ones that really focus on everything that happens before a cigar is rolled. And that's a luxury because it requires a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of patience. The cigar industry was really created and built off of this foundation that you're smoking a cigar that contains tobacco that is 3, 4, 5 years plus fermented and aged. Now, what that does is it eliminates all the, I don't want to use fancy words, all the things that make a cigar taste bad. Ammonia being one of the primary ones. Now, when you eliminate ammonia from a tobacco leaf, the nicotine stays. There's still nicotine in the tobacco leaf.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the interesting thing about nicotine, is nicotine in the absence of ammonia doesn't absorb in the human body. So I'll give you an example. If we take nicotine and we introduce ammonia, the nicotine molecule becomes very volatile and highly reactive, and it's easy to absorb by the mucosa and your, breathing airways, right? Mm-hmm. Like the alveoli when you go all the way down. Cigarette companies buy 50 million gallons of ammonia each year specifically to spray on tobacco before the cigarettes are made, so that the nicotine is absorbed much more effectively. So like they do this premeditated, right? So what the FDA, and I've had the privilege of writing letters to the FDA, to the Department of Health and Human Services, to the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, the Center for Disease Control, NIH. And what was beautiful is that all the articles that I quoted were NIH, National Institute of Health articles, describing what the cigarette industry does and what traditional premium cigar manufacturers do. Mm-hmm. We spend years removing the ammonia from tobacco so that we can deliver a product that is really a 1 hour to hour and a half journey of just enjoying good flavors. I mean, think if you were to gauge cigar makers as businessmen, you would say they're not pretty smart, because we don't make something that's addictive. You know what we're addicted to? We're addicted to the relaxation that this gives us. I've never met somebody that's addicted to cigars.
Yeah, and I was trying to, that was one of the questions that kind of came up in the last couple of weeks from somebody who's completely oblivious to cigars. You're like, well, cigars are addictive. And then somebody else came forward and said, like, no, they're not. and so it was hard for them to kind of, because it was like, as a society, it's like, I think we're taught one blanket statement, one blanket thing about tobacco. And, you're taught, and they do a really good job about teaching you what makes cigarettes so bad for you and addictive. But then that gets applied to everything,
Cigars are, first of all, it's the usage patterns. Let's be real. You don't inhale a cigar. If you do, you got a problem. Somebody needs to sit you down and talk to you, right?
Yes.
But you don't inhale them. Very few people retrohale them, and if you look at it, when you're paying 8, 10, 12, 15, 30 bucks a cigar, I could go in here and talk about the statistics of usage patterns, 1 to 2 cigars a month, average age is 27. I could bore everybody. But the truth of the matter is that a premium cigar is, and the analogy has been made over and over with wine. Unfortunately, wine is ingested, right? It goes into the system. It is a good analogy, but we don't really ingest a cigar. We're puffing on it. We're blowing the air out. We do it for flavor. We do it for relaxation, for enjoyment. When you look at a cigarette, if you smoke a cigarette, your peripheral blood vessels, I'm talking the hands and the feet, the smallest blood vessels in the body are the hands, the feet, the back, the skin on your back, your kidneys and your eyes, right? The smallest blood vessels in the body. If you know diabetics, what's the first thing they have problems with? It's their kidneys, their feet, their eyes, right? Mm-hmm. And when you smoke a cigarette, they've done studies doing ultrasound, and they do notice that after smoking a cigarette, peripheral blood vessels vasoconstrict for up to 15 minutes. Meaning that the blood vessels at the periphery are closed or have closed 50%, maybe even more. So what happens is that all the blood that you have in your body, your system, goes to your core. That drives blood pressure up. That drives the risk of heart attack up. That drives atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries. Would you believe that a frickin' cigar does the exact opposite?
Wow.
A cigar causes, obviously you're not going to be at a rock concert smoking a cigar, but most cigar smokers experience relaxation. How many times have you seen a photo on social media of a guy sleeping in a cigar shop who was right?
I saw one a couple of weeks, just last week. So
cigar smoking does calm you down, brings your heart rate down, your blood pressure down, relaxes you, and does the opposite effect. Why? Because there's no nicotine. The nicotine isn't being absorbed by the human body. Now, one thing I'm a huge advocate of is whenever you're smoking a cigar, make sure you're in a well-ventilated area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what type of smoke it is. And I'm not saying, secondary smoke is going to kill you. It's not. Because the Native American Indians proved us wrong many times. And I'll go into that. Because tobacco smoke kills pathogens in the air. That's why the Native American Indians the medicine man would go in the teepee and light tobacco leaves when somebody was sick, because what they were doing was cleansing the room.
Wow.
They may have thought it was spirits, but in essence, they've done studies, but any bacteria or viruses or other pathogens that were airborne would be killed by the tobacco smoke that was in the air. So that's why tobacco smoke is seen as, in many third world countries, as a ritual for healing or talking to the gods, because they saw miracles happening with the tobacco smoke. But nonetheless, I don't see cigar smoking as bad. I know this sounds so cliche, but the number one killer in America is diet, people's diet, what they eat, the lack of exercise. If you could cut back on anything, stop taking in so much sugar.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. I did a research paper in 2018. I literally researched all the cigar factory owners that have passed away in the past 50 years. And there was actually 3 of them that are still alive. Heinrich Williger is one of them, still living. But I looked at everybody. I wish I had the list off the top of my head, but, Don Carlos, and I mention his name with great pride because the Fuente family has opened so many doors for so many people. If you look at the age that all these men passed away at, it was in their 80s. You look at, Mr. Padron Reyes Sr., you go down the list, and it's like the average age of death of the 27 cigar factory owners that I looked at was, are you ready for this? 87 years of age. How is that possible when the average age of death of a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male is 72? Mm-hmm. What's going on? And I submitted that paper to every federal agency I could. And I guarantee you, they looked at it and they were just, we don't need this. We don't want to look at that. But there are facts, and then there are facts, and mind you, in the paper I wrote about how these people lived in Nicaragua, in Honduras, in Mexico, in the Dominican Republic, in places where healthcare is shit. So you're going to tell me that these people that lived in third world countries, they didn't have access to the Baptist health system or the Mayo Clinic or some fancy clinic? No, man. Not at all. There's 2 things that kill people: bad diet and stress.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 2 things you got to avoid. As a doctor, I'm of the opinion that cigars are not bad for you. I'm of the opinion that your lifestyle, apart from cigars, should be evaluated before you start pointing a finger at traditional premium cigars that are made in the way that they've been made for the past 100 years, properly fermented, properly aged. Whether the blends or the flavors, that's a different story. When I say flavors, I'm talking natural flavors. It could be a good blend, it could be a bad blend, but you got to get the fermentation and the aging done right to get rid of all those impurities. Because if you make a cigar, you rush a cigar to market, and it's still got ammonia in it, you're going to get that kick, and you're going to know you're getting that kick because the second you light that cigar, 15 minutes later, you got to go to the bathroom. It's the nicotine that's in your system, and it's making you want to go. It causes what's called the gastric colon stimulator. Nicotine and caffeine are gastric colon stimulators. So that's why quality cigars, when you walk into a store and you look at a cigar and you're like, that's $30. Bullshit, I'm not buying that. There's a difference between a $20, $30 cigar and a $5 cigar or a $6 cigar. Now, I don't want to ruffle feathers in that price point. There are people that make great cigars. We do. We make a great $5 cigar, but the tobacco's 4 years aged. You have to find out how the tobacco was fermented and how it was aged. And that's why it's so important. You can have a great sales force selling cigars, and you get great bookkeeping reports at the end of each month. But if you are in the cigar business because you truly love the nature of what traditional premium cigars are, I think we overlook a lot what our sales are month to month. We know when our company is healthier, when it's time to, pick it up a little bit. But you can't run a cigar business like looking at Excel sheets every day. You cannot do that, because this product here has a mind of its own. It really does. It's like trying to rush. You can't rush certain things, Antoine. You just can't.
Oh no, I know. Tell us about the latest cigar that you just released.
Wow. Just so you know, if we don't talk about our cigars, I don't mind.
I want people to hear it.
So, look, last 2 years ago, we closed our factory in Honduras. We got slammed by 2 major hurricanes and a pandemic, and our operations were not large enough to withstand those types of pressures. The latest cigar that we released was a cigar that I was trying to make in Honduras for about 2.5 years. And getting the binder and the filler tobaccos in Honduras was possible. I could never get the wrapper tobacco. I couldn't get it. It wasn't accessible to me. And there was a few suppliers of leaf tobacco that stopped selling us tobacco because we had, ironically, in 3 or 4 years, had received multiple nominations from Cigar Journal, who's been a great advocate of our company and our family and our cigars. But instantly after our 3rd year, another nomination. A week after, they stopped supplying us tobacco. I don't know why they would do that. I mean, there's room for everybody in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually kind of glad that they did, because I'm not smoking that cigar now, but I wanted to create a puro, a cigar that was binder, filler, wrapper from the same country. When I reached out to Frank Herrera, who's our company's lawyer, right? And I told Frank, hey, Frank, look, this is what's going on. This is what I need to do. This is what we're trying to achieve. I said to him, I need a factory where tobacco acquisition is not a problem. I need a factory with a reputation that is solid. I need a factory that I was looking for a new partner. I needed a factory with a family that had integrity, a business that had the types of ethics that I was accustomed to and the way we were raised as a family and me as a man. And when it came to tobacco, the name La Aurora came up. That was one of the names that came up. And one thing led to another. I go to the factory and I went there with a premeditated approach, knowing what I was looking for. I wanted to complete that one blend that I wanted to create. And they introduced me. It was on one of the, I've taken many, many trips there. It's so funny, right? Oh God, if I posted every trip I've taken, it would be, living in Miami, it's a perk. It's freaking right there, hour and 20 minutes.
Right.
On one of the trips I went down there, I saw a leaf. I actually went wandering and I saw one of the girls deveining tobacco leaves, the wrapper. And I looked at this wrapper and I just was blown away by the look of it. It's just a medium shade. I wanted to create a Habano natural, puro, binder filler wrapper, but the thing I was missing was the wrapper. And now that I'm in a new country, I'm trying to think Dominican instead of Honduran. I saw this wrapper, beautiful color. I thought it was a Habano 2000 because it had a little bit of a reddish hue to it. And I come to find out it was a corojo seed grown in the Cibao Valley. And I'm like, wait, corojo? Really? Cibao? Like Dominican Republic? There's so much propaganda being done for corojos outside of the DR that, it's like if I say San Andres, what's the first thing you think of? Mexico, right? When I saw this wrapper, I sat down with Manuel Inoa and we started talking about a blend. And he knew right off the bat. And he had been sitting on tobaccos for a couple of years with the idea of creating a puro, a Dominican puro. And lo and behold, about a year later, that cigar came to life. And when I tried it, I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it was a Dominican puro. Binder filler wrapper, 100% Dominican. My dream of making a puro, Antoine, was because if you look at Cuban cigars, what are they? They're puros.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at all Cuban cigars, they're in high demand. The entire world wants them. I'll settle for Nicaragua if I can't get a Cuban. I'll settle for Honduran if I. And I never understood that whole concept of old world and new world. No, that's bullshit. Old world, new. It's 2023. Delete. Press delete. And we got to think of cigar manufacturing like who's working with the best tobaccos and putting out the best cigars today. Doesn't matter what happened in the past. That's the past. And we saw the acquisitions taking place the past year.
Mm-hmm.
We saw Habanos, obviously the people of Cuba were affected by hurricanes as well. That's a terrible thing. Shortage in cigars, cigar manufacturing, factories closing, reopening. And our company works with 47 small distributors around the world. And they like our core line. They like the Connecticut, the San Andres. They like the Sumatra. They do well with them. But I've always had this thing of I want to build a reputation for making a fantastic puro outside of Cuba. And that's the cigar that we created. It's the Series L Natural. The L is the Roman numeral for the number 50, which is me turning 50. It was kind of a celebratory cigar. I turned 50. I'm headed downhill. And it's just a cigar that you can have any time of day. Everyone always says, early morning coffee, I'll have a Connecticut. This cigar you can have all day long, morning, afternoon, lunch, after a steak, after fish, after chicken. It works well with everything. You can pair it with rum. You can pair it with a Chardonnay. You can pair it. It's a phenomenal cigar because it's not overpowering. It's got strength. It's got complexity. It's got balance, but it's not overpowering in the way that it's going to conflict with anything that you pair it with. And we created that cigar, and it's, I don't go into sales. I think it's kind of like braggadocious, but it's been doing very well. We need to get more product in the U.S. Otherwise, in about a month, we will have problems, We don't do back orders either. As a company, we have a reputation for only offering what is in stock. I don't know if that clicks with you. We don't do pre-orders.
Oh, now that's different.
Yeah, we don't. Like, so we might have a blend coming out in July. We don't do pre-orders. When the shipment lands and it's in our warehouse, then we send out an email saying our shipment has arrived. We can now take your orders. And we do that for two reasons, because we don't like taking people's money beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
And number two is we don't like keeping people waiting. The suspense is really, I think it's overdone. It's, yeah, if you build up a hype and then the cigar arrives and it's not that amazing, then I think
Yeah, it's like, I think the industry has always had that issue where you'll see a press release come out and it'll be like, I think they're getting a little bit better where they're at least saying a lot of the companies like the cigar will be out next month or something like that. But there's still companies that are sometimes like, it'll be out this fall, and you're like, when in the fall? And then you have to like, you wait, and then it's like the summer when they say this, and then, the sample that you might have,
yes,
tried out
yes.
during the summer is completely different from the cigar that ends up coming out in the fall or the winter. And so there is a lots of, that's a whole show within itself. It's like everything wrong in the cigar industry. We could have, like I said, a whole hour conversation about that.
I wouldn't say wrong. I think people are in sales cycles are key. Meeting your monthly expenses are key. You have to get creative. We had that conversation today with one of our brands that we manufacture. They wanted to start taking pre-orders, and I said, we don't do that. I said, if you'd like, you could establish your own company and you can take your own pre-orders, but don't let that shadow cast on us, because God forbid, if you don't deliver in 3 months, it takes 9 months to get the order in. I don't want that backlash on us, because I hear the backlash. One of the things that our retailers know is that we don't open more accounts than we can supply. It's quite a very simple business model. So we estimate that every account we supply is going to order every 6 months, every 6 weeks. I'm sorry. 6 to 8 weeks is when they usually reorder, or they need to restock. There's two things we don't do. We don't oversell any account. We don't want product to sit there for 6 months. They don't run, as Abe Dububney once told me, I don't run a fucking museum, he said. Sorry, excuse the bad word.
No, it's good.
I hope this is adults only, right? I'll never forget what he told me. He's like, look, Gabby, I don't run a museum. I said, I get that. I respect that. I said, so we like to sell what they need, not what they want. A lot of times they're trying to see if they can get a deal if they buy bulk, but that just reduces our value. And when you're a boutique cigar manufacturer, value is where it's at. You got to be lean. You got to watch your overhead. You got to offer a great product at a phenomenal price. And so two things we don't do. We don't take pre-orders, and we don't open any accounts that we can't afford to stock frequently. I hate back orders. I dread back orders. They literally hang right there. That's a back order that we have. And that one will get filled in about 10 days. But yeah, I'm not a fan of, it doesn't make sense. A lot of times when you have a back order, you ship it out and the customer's like, what the hell is this?
Right. They can't remember that they ordered it.
Yeah, Jim, you ordered that in January. Well, fucking it's April. What the fuck are you shipping me? So it's pretty cool, man. Being small has its perks. It does have its perks.
I want to wrap up this part of the interview with two questions. I always had two questions in 2022, and I decided to kind of change them up just a little bit for 2023. So you're the first person to kind of get some of these questions. So the first question is, do you have a philosophy that you live by?
Wow, that's incredible. philosophy that I live by. So I'm trying to decipher my daily habits and versus a philosophy is a very deep approach to my existence, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people will kind of lean towards using the word karma as being a philosophy to live by, but that old saying, you reap what you sow. Same as, if you want to be treated with respect, you give respect. If you want to be treated with love, you give love. And me being in the cigar industry, I've been very isolated. I'm trying to keep this not just me as the person, but as the businessman, as the cigar maker, having certain limitations where I can't get in my car now and drive to lounge and hang out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not supposed to drive at night. Supposed to. We'll keep that a secret. Okay. But yeah, life is about if it's like, when you give, if you give from the heart, that old biblical saying, what the right hand does, the left doesn't know about. So if I do charity with my right hand, it's going to come back tenfold with the left.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of live life not premeditated, but I have learned in my 50 years that it's that energy that you possess that really gives you that inner peace, to focus on the good things. And when you own a business or you run a home or a family or you have children or you have whatever world you're in, it's your inner philosophy that transmits energy to everything that you do. I've got close friends of mine that say everything I touch turns to gold. Little do they know that the sacrifices that have gone into making that possible. And even though in their eyes it looks like gold, to me, I'm just getting started. There's no, I don't think in life you ever win. Does that make sense? I don't think the day ever comes where it's like, congratulations, you won. Woo! No,
I feel like when you win, you're dead.
It's downhill from there.
Yeah.
So it really is my philosophy on life is just that energy, man. What you put out, what you get back. A lot of times we're misunderstood. A lot of times people take a snippet of what I said and maybe drag it out, because if you got a problem with me, pick up the phone, call me. Some of the most, what's the word? Yeah, this is what sucks about having English as your third language, right? You're trying to find the word. Some of the most controversial cigar makers in our industry, people that you would think we would strangle each other to death, we're best friends, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll give you, and this is not that person, but I have a lot of respect for Skip Martin. But I could see how he's so set in his ways that it's either his way or the highway, but he's a man on a mission, right? So I'm in the DR. I check into the hotel. You know how it is. You're in a fucking foreign country. You check into the hotel. You're like, what do I do tonight? In comes Skip Martin. I'm having dinner. I'm like, holy shit, what a great surprise. It's the first time we meet in person, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had a great time talking about cigars, about tobacco, about the industry, about the problems in the industry, about what the industry needs to do. And I would say if you ask a layperson if you think Skip Martin and I would hit it off that good, they'd probably say no. But you got to give people a chance. You got to hear them out. Because at the end of the day, what you find is that there's a reason why people are where they're at. First and foremost, it's humility. When you're humble, you're receptive to what others have to say. You're receptive to other people's feelings, because you want to make sure that you respect that individual. The greatest way to show respect is to be humble. It's the greatest way to show respect. It's not to go up to someone and say, hey, I respect you. Bullshit. Shut the fuck up, listen, hear them out, and understand where they're coming from. And I think that's a really good winning philosophy to have in life, because I've witnessed firsthand humility opens all doors. So in the front end, you want to be humble in order to receive. And on the back end, you want to definitely be grateful. Those are two things that I live by. Is I don't take anything for granted. I'm grateful for all the people that have helped me to get to where I'm at today. You know, I called Manuel Noah during the new year. And I said, Manuel, I said, I want you to know something. I said, you saved my business. I said, you and La Aurora Cigars Factory saved my business. I thank you. My family thanks you. And we wouldn't be where we are today without them. And I think that's what builds strong relationships. And that's what builds platforms and foundations for growth. So that's my philosophy, Antoine. That's a great question, man.
And I want to finish with this question. And it's probably like the simplest question, but I'll be interested to see how you interpret it. But I want you to finish this sentence. Dr. Gaby Kafie is
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy. So you could just delete this entire interview because I am fucking nuts. You got to be nuts to do what I do. You got to be. You know what it is? It comes from a place of love and passion, and people throw around the term passion, but as a cigar maker that's dedicated my life to making premium cigars 100% since July 7, 2013, all in. How many cigar makers, and I don't mean to say this in a way of disrespecting maybe somebody's financial situation or maybe the fact that they have other commitments, but if you want to be great at something, you have to do it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you put in part-time, you're going to get part-time. And you got people that want to put in part-time, but they want to receive full-time. They never will receive full-time. Now, what's interesting is I'm happy working full-time and receiving part-time. That's the fucked up thing about me. I'm really, really happy working 3-4 times as hard as I need to work to get half the results of all the other companies that are out there. Because I'm first generation, I'm self-financed, I'm self-funded. I'm like very rare stories that you see of people actually continuing to improve in our industry, climbing the ladder of quality. I'm not saying success. I'm saying climbing the ladder of quality. My pursuit for quality never ends. And that's why we're still in business today.
Great. Can you tell people, I know that there's a link on the screen for those people who are watching, but can you tell people what website and social media that they can follow in order to kind of keep up with you and your brand?
So kafiecigars.com, Kafie, Facebook, Instagram, Kafie 1901 Cigars. I'll be honest, we're starting to build a YouTube page. Everything is Kafie 1901. Google my ass. If you see a phone number, call me, I'll answer. Well, no, not technically Google my ass. Google Gaby Kafie. All right? Yeah, I'm easy to reach. I'm easy. One of the things with the BCA that I want you all to know is that we give a lot of advice to people that are getting into the business, the industry, are in it. We're trying to figure stuff out. We're not saying we figured it out, but we know where to get the answers. And don't be afraid. You can go to boutiquecigarassociation.com. You can join. We're actually working with a few major trade shows, TPE being one of them, having a pavilion next year. PCA, Intertobac. There's a lot of good stuff going on. Just as we saw a craft beer movement 20 years ago that is now 6,000 companies strong, we don't ever think that there's going to be 6,000 cigar companies out there in the boutique cigar world, but we do see the number growing, and the only way it's going to continue growing is having us all come together and forming a lobby association to help keep the feds off of our back, the FDA specifically. But yeah, man, thank you very much. Reach out to me, send me a private message on Instagram or Facebook. I usually respond. Info@kafiecigars.com is my personal email. But thank you very much, Antoine. This was fantastic. I'm not ending the interview, but this was really good, man. You asked me a couple of questions that I wasn't ready for, but I am 100% content with the response because it is me, pal.